Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a very, very promising show for you today. We're going to talk about high flavanol diets and how they affect blood pressure during the first hour. And then during the second hour, we're going to talk about pathogens in the mouth that both induce and promote aggressive forms of oral cancers. Before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. The website is eatlegendary.com. The code is SHR10, and not only will you save 10% off, but you'll also show them that you learned about them here on Superhuman Radio, which helps the show. They are our title sponsor. Please stock up on the tasty pastry for the holidays. It's a great snack, looks and tastes like a Pop-Tart, but it has less than 1 gram of sugar and anywhere from 9 to 15 grams of high-quality, high-leucine protein, and under 3, in some cases, 1 impact carbohydrate. And you can toast them or eat them raw right out of the packaging. They're delicious. Your kids will love them. Don't tell them that they're good. Just tell them to eat all they want. I mean, this is a snack that you can eat pretty much with reckless abandon. So check them out. Go to eatlegendary.com. SHR10 is the code to save 10% off your entire order. And now we'll be joined by my guest. And let's just get some of the branding work up here. Today, I'm talking with Professor Gunter Kuhnle, right? Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Welcome to the show. You are with the University of California in San Francisco, correct?
I'm I am actually at the University of Reading in the UK, but my collaborators are in the UC Davis.
No. Oh, you used to be with UC Davis, really?
Yes. They work with UC Davis. So one of the collaborators is at UC Davis.
No, but you're right. You're with the University of Reading in the UK. I saw that was a mistake of mine. I just moved, Professor. But all of the contents of a home with 50 years of accumulation in 2 days. I'm still not back to normal. I'm exhausted, to be honest with you. So anyway, okay. So let's talk a little bit about this research. Why did this study need to be done? Why did you have to look at flavanols and their relationship to blood pressure?
Well, we have known, we have suspected that there's a link between flavanols and blood pressure for quite some time. So in the mid 90s, there were studies in Panama about people moving from an isolated island to Panama City who changed their diet and changed their diet essentially from a high flavanol to a low flavanol diet, and whose risk profile for cardiovascular diseases changed. And it was also the time when there was a lot of research into different types of phenolic compounds, of which flavanols are one. And one focus on a lot of studies on flavanols showed that flavanols can reduce blood pressure in different ways. We still don't know actually how they do it, but we know that if you feed people defined amounts of flavanols, their blood pressure drops, their vascular system becomes more elastic. Now, all of these studies were fairly small. They were short-term, and especially people were fed specific foods or flavanols as an isolated compound, but it was never part of their normal diet. And the interesting question was, of course, what happens if people eat flavanols as part of the normal diet and not specially fed? What happens to normal people? And that's the great part of nutritional epidemiology. We can look at a large group of people who eat their normal diet, who are not specially fed specific diets, and we can then look at an effect. Now, the big problem here is, of course, how do we know what people are eating? So we had to find better ways.
I noticed that. I want to mention something. So when I first saw this research, I thought, oh, great, food diaries. Once we look at food diaries, you really, people have a distinct habit of over-reporting what they perceive as good behavior and under-reporting what they perceive as bad behavior. But you guys corrected for that. You actually went and looked at blood work for these people to identify metabolites of the flavanols, correct?
So that's exactly what we did. So when we planned this study originally many years ago, the idea was to do it like everyone else does it. So we use food diaries, we look for intake, and then we measure it. But obviously, we already knew the limitations of all the problems of recording what people are eating. So we looked for an alternative, and nutritional biomarkers. What we've done is the best way forward, because we actually know what those people have consumed. We don't have to rely on what they tell us. We don't have to rely on food composition tables, but we know exactly what we find in their bloodstream.
Okay, so this is a much more meaningful study than somebody who says, yeah, we asked 25,000 people what they eat, and here's what we found correlations in, because people lie all the time. So let's talk about the research and how the data was compiled. So did you look at different types of flavanols, or did you look at the total flavanol load? So somebody eats berries every day, they drink green tea, and we look at the total flavanol load, or did you look at individual flavanols and their unique contributions to this?
No, we looked at the entire group of flavanols. So we looked at two groups of flavanols. We looked at total flavanols, and we looked at a very specific type of flavanol called epicatechin. Mm-hmm. And the reason for this is that the two biomarkers we used, one is specific for total flavanols. It's a specific subgroup of flavanols, but most flavanols, and the other is specific for epicatechin. Now, the disadvantage of the epicatechin one is that the plasma half-life is, the time in the body is too short to get very good data, except for in people who really regularly consume it. So that was a big limitation, whereas the other one has a stays much longer in the body, so we can be more confident that the data is representative of the general intake.
Okay, and so what did you find when you started to look at these? First of all, I would imagine you stratified these groups. How did you determine how to stratify these groups?
So what we have done, we have conducted our analysis with continuous data. So we didn't split them into groups or anything. So the only stratification was male female, because we know from previous work that there's usually a difference between men and women in the response. Women
let me guess. Females tend to consume more flavanols than men.
Based on their overall energy intake, yes. Men tend to be heavier and larger. They tend to eat more.
Well, and men aren't going to grab a handful of blueberries and eat them and feel satisfied, and women will, because they feel it's not just the satiety aspect of these foods. It's women know that these are good for us, so we eat more of them. Men go, nah, I don't want that. Give me beef. So. Well,
it's a UK study, so for us it's mainly tea. So what people drink is tea. So if you have a high tea intake, most of the other foods are not as important.
Yeah, that's interesting. And women do drink more tea than men. That's cool.
I'm not sure here.
In the UK it's different, right? Everybody drinks.
That's it. I think tea is sort of the stable drink here. And that made the study really good, because it meant that we have an extremely wide range of intake. We have those people who drink a lot of tea. We have people who drink coffee or no tea at all. So we had a huge range, whereas a study conducted, for example, in the US would be different, because people tend to drink less tea.
Yes, that's interesting. Now, is it just green tea that possesses these benefits, Professor, or do all different strains of tea have some amount of flavanols in them?
It's mainly green and black tea. So green tea contains most, but black tea contains also quite a lot.
Now the reality is that both green tea and black tea start from the same plant. It's just the processing or the roasting or the drying that makes one green and one. So could it be said that the more processed the tea is, as in black tea, the more of these flavanols that are lost?
It depends on the type of processing. So in that case, yes, if they get oxidized, they would be no longer active. But for other foods, it might well be that the way they're processed, they're released from a matrix which would otherwise not be accessible. So it's difficult to sort of say in one way that processing increases or decreases the amount.
So I realize that your paper did not attempt to elucidate the pathway of action, just the correlation of this response. But
yes,
if we juxtapose this research against the backdrop of what we know about high blood pressure in first world countries, it's usually tied to the onset of metabolic disorders, which start from insulin resistance. In the case of high blood pressure, high insulin levels, increased angiotensin converting enzyme, and this constricts blood vessels, which makes the blood more pressurized, if you will, and blood pressure rises. Can we extrapolate anything? Flavanols have been implicated as antioxidants, but they have also been implicated in insulin receptor sensitizing. Could we say that? We can guess where this is coming from.
So the one thing is the antioxidant. The idea that flavonols act as antioxidant, we're pretty certain they don't, because the way they're metabolized in the body makes them no longer being able to act as antioxidants. So we can be fairly certain that they don't act as antioxidants. About all the other pathways, we have some ideas of what is likely to happen, and it's likely that they affect the elasticity of the vascular system. So they make the vascular system more elastic and more flexible, and they probably also deal with blood coagulation and angiogenesis. But it's unfortunately it's too early to really know the underlying pathway.
Has there any research out there that correlates with your findings that used, say, flavanol supplements devoid of the original tea leaf itself? I know there's epicatechin capsules out there now. Do we have any evidence that these flavanols act the same, whether they are resident in the original leaf versus extracted from the leaf and given in capsule form?
So we have conducted a bit before. We have conducted a number of studies for a large project which was funded by the EU, which was called Flaviola, which was sort of a fairly large project, and there we used extracts, and we saw the same effect. And there are some studies where people use pure epicatechin or purer compounds, and they see the same effect. So the effect size we observe in the study is very comparable to almost all studies we've seen before, which is nice.
This is really exciting. So I have to be frank with you. I've been doing this for 15 years, and a lot of the interviews I start, and I think, this is interesting. But now that you're saying that you can use the isolated flavanols, if you don't want to drink green tea, you can take capsules and get a lot of these benefits. Now this becomes something that is both measurable, but also is easy for people to do. I don't like green tea. I don't like the taste of it. And the thought of starting to drink green tea to improve blood pressure isn't exciting to me. But taking a capsule twice a day is,
Well, yes, I think from where I'm coming from a nutrition side, the interesting side is, can you use foods and change the diet? And there are a lot of dietary changes you can make. So tea is one, but it's berries, it's palm fruits, it's quite a wide range of foods which you could use to increase flavanol intake. Now, the big question, of course, we have is that we don't know how much it is. We know that it's in the top 10% of our cohort, but how much this is going to be converted into flavanols, that's sort of the big question. We don't know, because we don't have the data to investigate this.
And that leads to the question about downstream metabolites. Do flavanols stay intact, or do they trigger downstream metabolites? So
the flavanols are all either taken up and are metabolized to glucuronides and sulfates and so on. So they stay largely intact, but they're also metabolized by the microbiome. So they're metabolized in the colon, and they form a compound. They form many compounds, but the main compound they start with is called the gamma-valerolactone. which is also taken up by the body.
Okay, so now you've opened up an entirely new, interesting pathway. So we know that the gut microbiome diversity is not accidental. It's actually affected by diet, number one. And we know that some microbes in the gut make harmful chemicals, and some microbes in the gut make helpful chemicals. So do we see changes in the gut microbiome shifting to one type of microbe versus another in people who drink green tea long term?
I have to admit, I don't know. We have looked at changes to the microbiome, but the problem with changes to microbiome is it's very difficult to attribute to state that a change is positive or not. It changes well, based on what you consume, but whether this change is beneficial or not, it's always very difficult to say unless it goes to some extreme. From our compounds, we have not found that there's a huge difference between the individuals. So the valeriolactones that are formed in virtually all. So it's not like, for example, with soy, where you have a certain group of people who can metabolize it differently from others.
Right.
We have not found the same for our compounds, and we haven't really looked into large scale changes of the microbiome.
Okay, so to what degree did we see a beneficial change in blood pressure? And is it the same change whether you are already metabolically deranged versus healthy?
So what we have found is, obviously we haven't found changes, we have found differences because of the way the study worked. And in those with the highest 10% of intake and those with the lowest 10% of intake, we found a difference of about 2 millimeters mercury. So between roughly 1 and 3 millimeters was what we found. And we saw the largest difference we saw in those who were already hypertensive, so in those with blood pressure over 160.
Now, were these changes across the board, systolic and diastolic, or did you see a better increase in one?
It was strong. It was stronger for systolic blood pressure.
Interesting, very interesting. So, systolic is when the heart is contracting, and diastolic is when the heart is expanding. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, were there any other correlates that jumped out at you? Like, I understand that this was the important one, but I'm always suspect people who have specific dietary approaches tend to have broad opinions of different dietary items. So maybe somebody who drinks green tea, maybe also they eat a certain type of diet, maybe more Mediterranean, or maybe there are non-dietary influences, like, well, people who drink green tea also take yoga. Were there any other correlates that you could find?
So we have thought about this. Now, the study was conducted in the 1990s, so we have to think about what people.
Yeah, nobody was doing yoga back then.
so a lot of the things we now would see as a standard thing were not really as common then, and things which were common then are different. But we have looked for a number of factors which might affect it. The usual one is, of course, health behaviors. So if you look at someone who consumes a healthy diet, you would expect to consume more fruit and vegetables. We would assume they don't smoke and they are more physically active. The nice thing with tea as a drink and as the main source is that it's not as selective as, say, berry consumption. So berries are expensive, you have to buy them or you have to forage them, but they're not readily available in our population. So they usually select the group of people who can afford them and who are interested enough in consuming them. Tea is in the UK a staple drink. It's what one drinks when one gets home. So that showed that we didn't find any difference by social class. We didn't find any difference based on body mass index. So overall, we didn't find many differences. The one thing which we were obviously worried about was, and I'm sorry, I have just lost you.
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you again. The microphone cable dropped out. So the one thing we were, of course, most interested in was, is flavanol simply a marker for fruit and vegetable intake? Because that would be sort of the obvious thing. People eat large amounts of flavanols, people eat large amounts of fruit and vegetable. And because we know it's very difficult to estimate fruit and vegetable intake, we said, well, we're not looking at the food diaries, but we look at plasma vitamin C. Plasma vitamin C is not an ideal marker of fruit and vegetable intake, but it's sort of a reasonable marker which gives us an idea. If it's very high, probably people consume large amounts of fruit and vegetable. If it's very low, probably people consume less.
Right.
And so we have taken this into our model, and we couldn't see any difference. So adjusting additionally for vitamin C didn't change our outcomes at all, which suggested our flavanols act separately from fruit vegetable intake. And what is even more interesting is if we combine the two in a sort of two-dimensional model, we can see that high vitamin C intake is associated with a reduction in blood pressure. Similar of this, high flavanol intake is associated with reduction. But if you combine the two, it's actually additive. So it's not that one cancels out the other. And that's sort of, we did this as a sort of a sensitivity analysis, really just to show that it's not based on just fruit vegetable intake. We didn't go further. But yes, so we can say that it is actually the compound in there which plays the role. And we went one step further because we thought about, well, is it just a marker of tea intake? But obviously, it is a marker of tea intake, but we know that tea has huge differences in flavanol content. So what we've done is we used the tea intake data from the food diaries, which is more reliable because it's sort of tea, it's regularly consumed. People tend to be very stable.
No one's going to lie about how much tea they drink in the UK.
They might.
Right.
But so what we've done then is to adjust for tea intake. And again, it was like with vitamin C, it didn't change anything.
Did you look at blood sugar, fasting blood sugar, and or insulin levels in the blood?
No, we didn't, because it was not really of interest for this study. We sort of designed the study. Well, there's no register we could use when we planned this, but the idea was really just to go for blood pressure as the first endpoint. Do they use body mass index in the UK as an indicator of obesity or leanness? Yes, we do.
Did you look at that? Did you record that?
We included body mass index in our model and didn't change anything. In general, flavanol intake increased with body mass index, but it's not really that surprising because the heavier a person is, the more they consume, and the more they consume, it's more likely that they consume more flavanols if it's part of their normal diet.
This is fascinating to me. This is, there's usually, when you see studies like this, there's usually a hole somewhere that makes you go, oh, well. But this is fascinating to me because even though the more obese people, and they probably are the ones that sort of greatest change in blood pressure, beneficial blood pressure, but the higher the flavanol intake correlated with them. That's fascinating. So
yes,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It is quite interesting. Yes.
So, was there anything about this study that jumped out at you that you didn't expect to see besides the actual endpoint that you were looking at? Were there any other things that jumped out at you and went, wow, this is fascinating?
I think the most fascinating thing was when we compared the biomarker data with dietary data. That was really fascinating. We suspected that there's very little agreement between the two while the study was progressing, but that there was so little agreement between the two was quite impressive. We never thought that the difference is going to be this big.
Yeah, that really is something. I would imagine that some people, who's going to lie about drinking tea in the UK? I guess people will lie about how much berries and fruits they consume because they want to make people feel that, well, I'm eating a lot of fruit and vegetables. But tea is like, oh, yeah, I drink 16 cups a day and nobody would bat an eye. Yeah, that's good for you. Okay. So it's fascinating. The tea component here really kind of washes out the whole, did people underreport or overreport? And obviously verifying that by lining up the actual presence of metabolites in the blood. Man, this is really a good study.
Thank you. I think it's not so much the misreporting of the tea. It's more the huge difference in the composition of tea depending on how people make it.
So did you see any even modest beneficial shifts in people who were already healthy from their flavanol consumption?
So if you just use the blood pressure, we didn't see any differences in those with a normal blood pressure.
But we don't know if the daily dose of tea that they were having already was why they were normal to begin with. I mean, you'd have to almost take a double-blinded approach to this and have people shift halfway through the study to find out if the reason that they have good blood pressure was because of the tea.
Oh yes, and I think the difference is 2-3 millimeters, so it would not get someone from 160 to 120. But I think the important thing, is of course to conduct an intervention study on a large scale.
I want to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk specifically about something you just mentioned.
Okay.
These are very modest changes, but why they are in fact statistically significant. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it, you'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off.
Proper hydration can lead to improved endurance, performance, and recovery. When we sweat, we lose valuable electrolytes that must be replaced. That's why Element created a zero-sugar, science-backed ratio of electrolytes that you can add to your water. It comes in 3 flavors. Sample them all risk-free with the Element Variety Pack. Carl's favorite is raspberry. Free shipping on all U.S. orders. Go to shrnetwork.biz/LMNT and get yours today. When craving a snack, reach for Select Savory Snack Sugar-Free Biltong, the healthy alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. They use a fattier cut of beef, making it more tender and flavorful. For mealtime, choose from their 63 seasonings, which are sugar and additive-free. From chipotle rub to savory pumpkin spice, you'll find an option to suit your palate. Go to shrnetwork.biz/SSS today. Use code SHR15 to save 15% on any meat snack or seasoning. Savor the flavor today.
Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with, Professor Gunter Kuhnle about how flavanols influence blood pressure. So this is a very modest change. This would not compete with, say, an ACE inhibitor or some pharmaceutical therapeutic, but this is considered statistically significant. Why is it significant if it's only 3 or 4 milligrams of mercury?
So the effect size and the significance, well, you can have a very small effect size and it's still being significant and the other way around. But the data show simply that we have a small size, but we're very confident that this size is a true effect, or is a true difference. And even though it sounds small, 1 to 3 millimeters, actually, this is what we find in studies which look at a Mediterranean diet. And the Mediterranean diet is sort of commonly accepted as sort of a diet which is heart healthy and improves cardiovascular health. We also find a similar effect size in when people reduce sodium intake sort of to intermediate sodium intake. So not very low sodium diet, but sort of going from the normal sodium to the intermediate sodium diet, which was done in the DASH sodium trial. So 2 millimeters are actually quite good for nutritional intervention, and it's sort of a part of the many lifestyle changes that can in the end provide a beneficial effect on cardiovascular disease risk.
So do you suspect that there could be a dose-dependent response here, for instance?
That's very difficult to say.
Let's say, let's say somebody consumes 16 cups of tea a day. There's a limit to how much tea you can drink. But now if we turn to these epicatechin tablets, they have green tea extract capsules. Now we can actually deliver supra levels of this compound. Do you think you'd see something different?
So we haven't looked at those response at that level. So our data shows that the higher, the bigger the difference between low and high, the bigger the difference in blood pressure is. But we haven't, if you look at our data, maximum what our top 10% consumes is about 600 milligrams a day. Now, the problem, of course, with especially green tea capsules is that high amount of green tea capsules have been linked again with adverse effects. So you can easily go into that range of adverse effects, and at least I know in Canada and in the EU that there are sort of warnings on excessive amounts of green tea extract, because not the flavanols or the epicatechin, but the epigallocatechin can affect the liver. So it is very difficult to sort of go to make sort of the linear dose responses. Oh, well, 600 milligrams gives you 2 millimeters, 1200 milligrams must give you double.
Right.
And I think one thing we deliberately decided was to stay with our food and with what people consume. And the UK population consumes high amounts of tea, but still much less than, say, China or Japan, where there's a much more tea culture based on green tea. So it would be interesting to look in those populations how the differences would look like. And it would also be interesting to look in a population which doesn't consume large amounts of tea, to see how would this be different if there are different sources. So one interesting population is, of course, the Mediterranean countries. They don't drink tea. They have a fairly low flavanol intake overall because they have very different sources, but they're not considered to be extremely unhealthy.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Yes.
So I actually have a sponsor who's introducing an epicatechin capsule. It's just epicatechins. And that is, in fact, that is the magical component here in the green tea, right? That's been responsible for this result. Or am I wrong about that?
So it's difficult to say, because most studies that have been conducted use a mixture. They use epicatechin, catechin, and proanthocyanidin. So they use a mixture. So identifying a specific compound is difficult, and I think that's something we couldn't do with our work.
Yeah, very interesting. So what is the next step for you now that you've completed this study? What's the next transitional study that makes sense to proceed with?
Well, the one thing is we have now this large data set where there are a lot of interesting information, especially on the links between diet and metabolism and nutrient interaction. So what happens if, say, you consume large amounts of flavanols with other foods? Is there any difference in there? And then from my research interest, my main research interest is really dietary assessment. Is how can we link the biomarker information we have with the actual intake, and are there any predictors? Is there any way we can use the data we have to improve dietary assessment?
Are you drinking green tea right now, Professor?
No, it's too late for me for green tea. No, I tend to drink normal Earl Grey, but
that's the other challenge with tea. Like I recently gave up caffeine, all caffeine, and albeit tea has a lot less caffeine than say coffee. I think it's like some of the matcha green teas have as much as 26 milligrams per cup, which is nothing. But I've agreed to stay away from caffeine. And obviously that's the other thing that tea has. Do you think that the caffeine has any effect in this scenario?
Not from what we have found, but caffeine is bioactive, so it's likely to have an effect as well.
Yeah, it's very powerful, much more powerful than we give it credit for. I want to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want you to extrapolate what you hope both lay people and clinicians take away from this research.
Of course.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
Want to improve mental energy and focus? Try the new Superhuman Stack from Pure Nootropics. Stack Dynamine, Salbutamine, Theocrine, and palmitoyl-ethanolamide together and feel the lights go on in your brain. Find your perfect mix of these 4. Carl likes 1 cap of each and 2 caps of Dynamine. Bam! Lights on. Go to shrnetwork.biz/superhumanstack, all one word, today, and get yours for 25% off plus free shipping. That's shrnetwork.biz/superhumanstack. Mind Bullet is a kratom product derived from the coffee family to boost energy and creative juices. Mind Bullet comes in both pill and liquid form for the ultimate pre-workout supplement. When needing a little pick-me-up or to get through the morning fog, Mind Bullet will set your productive course fast. Go to shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet, all one word, today, and save 20%. No subscription required. That's shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet. Get yours today. Proper hydration can lead to improved endurance, performance, and recovery. When we sweat, we lose valuable electrolytes that must be replaced. That's why Element created a zero-sugar, science-backed ratio of electrolytes that you can add to your water. It comes in 3 flavors. Sample them all risk-free with the Element Variety Pack. Carl's favorite is raspberry. Free shipping on all U.S. orders. Go to shrnetwork.biz/LMNT and get yours today.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back. We're talking with Professor Gunter Kuhnle about how flavanols influence blood pressure in a beneficial way. And there's a lot of other benefits of flavanols. I mean, we can talk ad infinitum about all the different research that have been done on these flavanols, polyphenols, and all of these other plant-based components that seem to be beneficial to the human condition. What do you suggest with this research? What do you suggest to both clinicians and lay people who are thinking about any additional steps that can help modulate their blood pressure?
I think the important result of our study is to show that it is easily possible with fairly minor dietary changes to consume sufficient flavanols to get a lower blood pressure. Or let's put it better, to eat sufficient flavanols to achieve the possible effect. I think it's difficult to. I think it's important not to say that the diets change the blood pressure, but sort of to get the effect that is seen in studies and smaller studies. It is perfectly possible to do this with dietary changes, and it's not complex dietary changes. Yes, if one drinks tea, it's obviously easy, but if one doesn't drink tea, it's a few apples, or it's a handful of berries, or it's not like, say, moving to a Mediterranean diet where one has to change one's complete dietary pattern. It's sort of something which can be easily supplemented to it.
You can add it in. Yeah, you just add it in. If someone is not wanting to drink tea of any type for whatever reason, what would be the number 2 and number 3 go-to, like blueberries and berries in general, or what would you suggest?
Berries in general work well. What also works well are pommes fruits, so apples mainly, but pears as well. So these are fruits and vegetables which work quite well.
Yeah. So and you know, there's a company that just started doing business here in the United States, and I don't know, they could be in the UK by now, but they have 2 jars of capsules. One is green and one is red, and one claims to give you all of the recommended dietary components of vegetables in 3 capsules or 6 capsules, and the other one of fruits. And it's called fruits and veggies. They're sold together, and they've gone to great pains to make people understand that this is organic. So you can't say, oh, pesticides are concentrated, and they're selling these products out. They can't keep them in stock. People are signing up and subscribing to get bottles every single month because they believe that if they were eating more fruits and vegetables, they'd be healthier. But since they're not, they'll just take these pills. I worry about that approach because there are so many other things in fruits and vegetables that we may not realize have a role in why the magical components do what they do. What do you think about that?
Well, it's like the question we always have is, could you put exercise in a pill? And it's the same thing. It's fruit and vegetable. It's so much more than just the compounds. It's, for one thing, of course, if you eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, you can't eat anything else. So it's just simply being the satiety one gets from eating fruits and vegetables would have an effect on health by not overindulging other things. And then, of course, we have things like fiber, like the act of eating, and that's all very difficult to simulate from a capsule. And then, of course, we don't know what is in fruit and vegetables. We have sort of this, we can analyze them. Of course, we know a lot of what is in there. But the one thing in nutrition is, of course, that minute amounts of something can still be very important. And we simply don't know all of the things in fruit and vegetables. And we have this very nice study. In the UK, there used to be an apple research station where they worked on apples. And they one year, they took all the apples from a tree, labeled where they were from, and then analyzed all of these apples. And they had 2 to 3-fold differences in micronutrients in all of these apples. So it's very difficult to know what is actually in these foods and whether what is actually important, what we need. Well, obviously the water is not important, but do we know the type of fiber is probably important?
Well, and I've come to a conclusion, Professor. So we have lots of companies that are now fortifying food with fiber. So they'll take a food, a protein bar, whatever, and they'll add 15 grams of non-soluble or soluble fiber in there. And people complain when they eat these high fiber foods, these high fiber bars, that it just doesn't make them feel good. Their stomach feels weird. They just, and then people will say, yeah, but you get that much fiber if you eat a bowl of Brussels sprouts. And I've come to the conclusion that, like the pharmaceutical companies, they try to isolate something, right? They found the May apple is where cisplatin was discovered, a key chemotherapy. And the Native Americans used to eat the May apples and cure their own cancer. And they said, oh, it's cisplatin that does that. And we just need the cisplatin. And the cisplatin doesn't work as good as the May apples did. Now, we don't know when fiber is part of the matrix of a fruit. It's in there. It's part of it. The body handles it differently than if you just pour a teaspoon of fiber down your throat and drink water and think that you're getting the same value as eating a bowl of Brussels sprouts. So I'm with you on that. We think we're smarter than nature for some reason. We think we're smarter than nature.
Yes, I think one point, and that's a big difference between nutrition and the pharmaceutical industry. In the pharmaceutical industry, we have one specific target we want to address, an enzyme we want to inhibit, and we can work on that. But in nutrition, we have so many potential pathways, and we never consume pure compounds. And yes, there is, of course, the way from nutrition to pharmaceutics. If we find compounds, vitamins, for example, we've discovered vitamins, we know we need them, and we can give people vitamin B12, for example, if they need it. And if you have a vitamin C deficiency, you need vitamin C. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. But overall, for a lot of the beneficial effects we see, like fiber or fruit and vegetables or other foods, is that it's much more complex than just having an extract. It's a lot like the idea of the exercise pill. It doesn't replace going out or doing something or moving or just spending the time doing it.
It's funny. I had the author of the study on resveratrol on this show like 8 years ago. So they published a study that showed resveratrol caused some of the same adaptations to certain parts of the body as exercise does. And the media took that and said, skip the gym and drink more wine. In fact, the Daily Mail, a tabloid from the UK, published that article, skip the gym and drink more wine. And I had the author of the study on, and he was incensed. He said, first of all, we never said anything about wine in the study. We talked about resveratrol. But the media said, well, red grape skin has resveratrol in it. Wine has resveratrol. Skip the gym and drink more wine. And he said on the show, in order to get the amount of resveratrol that we use to get a therapeutic effect in the study, you would have to drink 1,000 bottles a day. And this is the problem. Companies they want to make money. They don't care if they lie. It doesn't matter.
Yes, and I think it's sort of the type of title which sort of I can just see it's sort of a great headline to say.
Sure,
drink more wine.
Who wants to go to the gym? I'd rather, if you tell me I can drink wine all day and live forever and be strong and healthy, I'm going to go that way. Why do I want to go to the gym? But you can't. It's a joke.
But I think that's a problem with a lot of nutrition studies is they get very nice headlines because you can sort of twist them a little bit and then make them sound more interesting, and then the original idea is lost. And I've worked a lot with journalists and newspaper people, and sort of it's always interesting because they obviously understand it as well. But it's sort of then in the end you get to the editor making a headline, and then the headline has to sell papers, and you don't sell a paper on balanced diet is good for you.
No, I think this is a fascinating study. In fact, I think I'm going to start drinking green tea because of you.
Well, that's a good idea.
And I appreciate you coming on the show and
Thank you.
talking about this, and I find it very, very fascinating. We're going to let you go now, but thank you, and please feel free to come back on the show as soon as you have more research. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care. We're going to take one quick commercial break. I'm going to try to get our guest on. We're having a little problem. She's using the wrong browser, I guess, and we may have to reschedule. So I'm going to try to do this during the break because I am the all and wonderful Oz. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I love beef. And if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender, with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 25% off all beef and free shipping on orders of $100 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again.
If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough.
When craving a snack, reach for Select Savory Snack Sugar-Free Biltong, the healthy alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. They use a fattier cut of beef, making it more tender and flavorful. For mealtime, choose from their 63 seasonings, which are sugar and additive-free. From chipotle rub to savory pumpkin spice, you'll find an option to suit your palate. Go to shrnetwork.biz/SSS today. Use code SHR15 to save 15% on any meat snack or seasoning. Savor the flavor today.
Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it, you'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off.
Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest, so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Now, this is a really good topic. We're being joined by Dr. Yvonne Kapila. Did I pronounce that right?
That's correct.
And she is a dentist and a Ph.D., and she has just published a study identifying certain pathogens in the mouth that induce oral cancer. Oral cancer is one of the most common forms of cancer on the planet. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kapila.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you here this morning.
So why this study? What did you, it's morning where you are and afternoon where we are. So why this study? What preceded this, that this pathogen or the identification of pathogens in the etiology of oral cancer needed to be elucidated?
So there's been a lot of epidemiological data that has really begun to basically give us some hints that there's a connection between bacteria that cause periodontal disease and various types of cancers. So when you look at large population studies, there are some indications that at that level, we begin to see some connections between people that have periodontal disease and the bacteria that cause periodontal disease and various types of cancers, not just oral cancer, but other cancers as well. So it was that sort of initial observation that led people to say, well, maybe some of these bacteria are then important in the causality of some of these various types of cancers.
Is it possible that these, so saliva is a natural filtrate of blood, and a lot of the things that's going on in the body can be seen in the mouth. Not everything, but a lot of things. For instance, if someone is prone to developing heavy calculus plaque in the mouth, they tend to also correlate with plaque in the arteries and blood vessels. So is it possible that the evidence of this bacteria in the mouth is just because it's also in the body, or is it originating in the mouth and getting into the body?
That's an excellent question and an excellent place to take us. So anytime you brush your teeth, and especially for individuals that have inflammation in the gums, gingivitis, the gums and the blood vessels in those areas tend to be leaky. Mm-hmm. And so you get what's called the bacteremia. Basically, every time you brush your teeth when you have inflammation in the gums. And so those bacteria that do originate in the mouth then find themselves into the systemic circulation and circulate all over the body. So definitely, and the more pronounced the disease you have in your gums, when you have more advanced forms of periodontal disease with bone loss, then you get sort of a lot more inflammation, leakier gums. And then, yes, there is a route by which those bacteria then find their way circulating throughout the body.
And the mouth is so close to the brain. I have to wonder if anyone's ever done a study about gum disease, the presence of gum disease, the more advanced present, and the occurrence of say, brain tumors. Well,
one thing that was just recently that came out in the literature is the connection between Alzheimer's disease and the bacteria that are found in periodontal disease, just as you pointed out. So we used to think that a lot of these organs were sterile, and that there was a blood-brain barrier. However, we are now discovering that a lot of not just the bacteria themselves, but some of the really nasty proteins that they secrete actually find their way into a lot of these places that we thought previously were sterile environments, such as the brain. And so recently, another high-end publication discovered that some of these bacteria that cause periodontal disease find their way into the brain, and also are important in some models that show the causation with Alzheimer's disease. So there's
the most valuable service that your dentist provides is that twice a year cleaning. And I remember about 10 years ago, my gums were starting to bleed when I would brush them. I used an ultrasonic toothbrush. Mm-hmm. And I went to a very good dentist here in town. He's fantastic, actually. And they did a deep scaling, which no one wants to go for. And he offered me anesthesia. I said, no, I don't need it. But they did deep scaling, and I had some teeth had pockets that were 3s and 4s. Now they're 0s. Over the course of a couple years, my gum health increased so dramatically, and it's so easy to do. And if you have health insurance that includes dental, they almost always give you 2 a year for free.
Right.
Get your teeth cleaned, for crying out loud, every year, twice a year, because what we're learning now is there's a bi-directional transference of what's bad in the body to the mouth and what's bad in the mouth back to the body again.
Absolutely. You brought another really good observation. So we've known this for a very long time with diabetes. So just as you've said, it's a bidirectional relationship. And we know that as you treat periodontal disease, the indices for diabetes improve and vice versa. So it's very well established that there is a bidirectional relationship. So that's a wonderful observation. And for some of these other systemic disease connections that we're finding, I think you maybe alluded to a cardiovascular disease, the Alzheimer's observation, oral cancer, and other cancers as well. We are beginning to see that, it's a complex relationship. And so, yes, in the case of diabetes, we know that if we treat one, we improve the situation for the other. So I completely agree. Yes. Going in for those cleanings twice a year.
Talk about the study. So how was the study designed and what did you learn?
So the study was done in animals, and what we found was that when we use this cancer model in mice, when we expose the cancer cells to these bacteria that are normally causative of periodontal disease, the tumors in the mice were very, very aggressive, more than normal. They became quite large. And what was very interesting was if we applied bacteriocin, which is a protein that is made by bacteria to fight off other bacteria. And this bacteriocin is quite neat because it's used as a food preservative. It's been around for many, many, many years. It's used to preserve cheese and other foods. So when we use this food preservative called nisin, we fed it to the mice. The tumors basically were reduced. So it presents really sort of a novel paradigm, if you will, of thinking of treating cancer with antimicrobials.
Right.
So it's sort of a new way of thinking of cancer. We know that cancer treatments have a lot of very harsh effects on patients. When patients have radiation and chemo, they suffer a lot from those treatments. And so potentially opening a new way of thinking of treating cancers with antimicrobials, such as this bacteriocin that we've talked about in the publication.
So so much has been discussed, studied, and still yet unknown about the gut microbiome. But it is obvious that there's not a partition between our gut and our mouth. Our mouth has its own microbiome. Is the microbiome in the mouth influenced, or does it influence the gut?
There again, we think that there may be a bidirectional relationship. So there are studies that have shown that, yes, again, mostly in mouse models, in animal models, that the oral microbiome does influence the gut microbiome. And we believe that also sort of this other in the other, and from the other direction, that through inflammatory pathways, through inflammation, that then indirectly the gut also influences the oral microbiome. And as you said, it's sort of one tube, and so they are very, very interconnected.
Well, and also we know from all the studies done on newborns breastfeeding and their guts, we know that 60% of the microbiome that's introduced to a newborn doesn't come from the milk, but instead the flesh, the areola of the mother's skin. And so it could be said for people who are interested in influencing their gut microbiome that the gateway to changing your gut microbiome is your mouth, because that's where stuff gets in.
That's exactly what I'm always trying to preach. And that's exactly right. And, so the very first microbiome that's established is absolutely, as babies nurse at the very first. I mean, obviously, as they enter the earth, they enter the world, through vaginal delivery, that they get exposed to the microbiome through the vaginal canal, and then the next round of exposure is through nursing, through breastfeeding, and absolutely. And so there is a difference between breastfed babies and formula-fed babies. There is a difference there as well. So we do believe that the very early exposure is very much influenced by these very first contacts in the infant. Very, very important.
So since you are both the physician and enlightened about this, what do you suggest to people do for the health of their mouth, but also not just for the health of their mouth, but for the contributory health of their gut? What should people do? Should be people, I don't believe that people should be gargling with Listerine all the time. I think that's a bad idea. What do you think?
Thank you for bringing that up. So imagine, well, one thing we need to know is that the microbiome is in a steady state, right? So we have microbes that are really important for health. These are called commensal bacteria. These are the bacteria that help us absorb nutrients. These are bacteria that help fight off disease. And so it's really critical that we know that we want to maintain certain microbes in our oral cavity, in our gut. And by using things like mouthwashes, some mouthwashes, antibiotics, they're sort of, really removing everything, which, all the microbes, which is not necessarily the best approach. So there does need to be a balance, where you do retain those healthy microbes. And so picture a situation where you can selectively remove out pathogens that are in microbial world, but retaining the commensals is really maybe an approach that we would want to consider pursuing. So you don't wipe everything out, because then what you do is you have a fertile ground for pathogens then to seed into that environment. And we have seen that. So when you have individuals that, you completely wipe out all the microbes, that's why people say, well, probiotics is a way to reseed or recolonize individuals who've lost all the microbes from the body. That's not a good situation.
No, because we don't even know. We haven't even identified all of the microbes in a person's body. And then depending on the geography of your origin and all these other things, it changes. It's probably more unique than fingerprints when you come to think about it, our own unique microbiome. So I every night I brush my teeth with a healthy toothpaste that we buy that has baking soda and sea salt and no triclosan or none of those antimicrobials. But I still have these angst feelings that, and I think about Weston A. Price. I think about Price and his work with the Aborigines and ancestral people. And he said, they didn't brush their teeth. They had no dental cavities. They, they had fantastic breath from the moment they woke up to the moment they went to sleep. And it really is it's what you eat and the terrain that causes this. And I've often thought about not brushing my teeth anymore, or maybe brushing it, but not with anything but water. You have any opinions on this at all?
So you've brought up a lot of really interesting points. So we have what's called the natural history of periodontal disease from individuals that don't have access to care, often from tea laborers in remote parts of the world. Mm-hmm. We know that some people succumb to periodontal disease. There are some people that genetically are predisposed to more aggressive forms of disease, and there are some individuals who are resistant to periodontal disease. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. The other thing is the diets absolutely are very an important part of the microbes and the films that form on our teeth, the biofilms. And if we look at old historical records before we had farming, for instance, and processed foods and these sorts of things, very different history, different microbes, when they look at deep sequencing of the bacteria that are there. So the diet that we eat very much influences the biofilm that coats our teeth. And with the more processed diets that we have, we have these various biofilms that then form plaque and calculus and so forth. So Yeah, the different diets that we consume also contributes significantly. A high carbohydrate, sugar carbohydrate diet also, of course, contributes to caries, as we all know. And so diets absolutely are a very important part of it, of the equation.
Is it fair to estimate that it's not the intrinsic effects of sugar that are corrosive to the teeth, but the fact that sugar tends to feed pathogens. Pathogens love sugar. They like fast energy. They're hogs for it. So is it the intrinsic effect of the corrosive nature of sugar, or is it the extrinsic effect that it seems to feed and help populate the mouth with more of these pathogens?
That's exactly right. That is exactly what you've just said. So it feeds the microbes that then produce acid that then unfortunately, then there's the demise of the mineral of the tooth, and that's what causes decay. That's exactly right. And so there's probably other components in the foods as well that feed the periodontal pathogens. And so it's the diets that we consume that yes are important, and as they're retained in the oral cavity and they're not removed by brushing or rinsing with water, as you've said, then they stay much longer and promote the shift in the microbiome, if you will.
So many of us are afraid to tell that one person. Like, I had a good friend I did a TV show with, and I love him. He's a wonderful person. But when I would get about 3 or 4 feet away from him, I could smell it coming out of his mouth. When someone has bad periodontal disease, it's this repulsive smell. It really is. It's very, you know what it is. And I spoke to him about it. I said, Bill, I'll say his name is Bill. I said, and he says, my wife never says a word. I said, you need to get to the dentist because there's something in your mouth that's not healthy. And he did. And in about a year, his gums cleared up and that went away. But so many of it, in fact, when I was a kid, there was a commercial for some mouthwash, tell somebody they have halitosis. I'm 62 years old, so this is back in a way. And I remember, it's always been a thing where people won't tell other people, man, something's going on with your breath. Like, you need to have your teeth checked out. But really, wouldn't you agree that if it gets to that state where you are now exuding this odor from these microbes that are making stuff in your mouth, that's where that odor is coming from, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's certain bacteria that are very well known for producing certain gases that then produce the malodor. But I think what you can also tell your friends is it's not just about the teeth and your oral health, but because of all the evidence we've been describing this morning, is that it's very important for their overall health, right? If you really care about your friend, you want to let them know that, this chronic time can predispose them to a lot of other, very serious diseases as well.
So besides the nisin, which I have seen in cheeses, by the way, annatto coloring, nisin. I've always wondered what nisin was. I didn't know. But besides these type of things here, getting more of them in your diet, perhaps, they could actually suppress the unhealthy pathogens in the mouth. Are there other things that you recommend people do, regularly to keep a healthy mouth?
I think we've touched on a lot of the points this morning. You mentioned diet. Obviously, diet is very, very critical. Routine, normal care, brushing and flossing, seeing your dentist regularly, making sure that, you stay on top of, cleaning your teeth. As you said, if you are predisposed to forming more plaque and tartar, then seeing your hygienist, your dentist regularly to making sure that those things are checked and that's taken care of. Healthy, just a general healthy diet, that really is, it's a very basic protocol that we need to follow. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. It's flossing daily. It's brushing daily. It's maintaining good hygiene, a good diet. There's really not much more than that. I think staying away from harsh things, as we've talked about, avoiding, constant use of antibiotics, things that will really decimate, the microbes of your oral cavity, things that of any sort of an extreme you definitely want to stay away from. And as you've said, we've had natural populations that do just as fine with sticks cleaning their teeth. A lot of these populations that just use sticks from the trees to clean their teeth, but have a very healthy diet. They do just fine. The
type of cancer that was identified in your study was a squamous cell type. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that the most popular type of oral cancer that people get?
It is. Of the oral cancers, squamous cell carcinoma is the most common. It is the most common, and it's worldwide. One of those cancers that's quite high up in terms of mortality. And the issue with oral cancer, the problem is that often it's not spotted until it's quite late. Unfortunately, whether people don't go to the dentist or don't notice it or don't get it checked early enough, then it leads to very aggressive forms of cancer that then become where they go into the nodes and get to the point where they can't be operated. They spread, they metastasize, this sorts of thing. And as we know, the morbidity is quite severe, disfiguring, and can be quite traumatic.
So people don't notice it because they don't pay attention to what goes on in their mouth. Let's face it, their tongue is there. You probably feel a bump on the buccal, or on the gum. Where do these cancers? I have this suspicion that these cancers form on the inside of the mouth, the buccal area, more often than on the gums. Is that correct?
Actually, most often they appear on the floor of the mouth and on the tongue.
Oh, down underneath the tongue and on the
underneath
tongue.
And on the tongue. That's the most
that's safe harbor for stuff. That's safe harbor down underneath the tongue.
Right, underneath the tongue. And so a lot of people don't often check those areas. And so that's where the primary location for oral cancer is.
And that's why the dentist, when I go get my teeth cleaned, Rachel grabs my tongue with a swath of cloth and pulls it up to the side and then lets it go again. Now I understand.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I thought she was trying to see if my tongue would come off.
Yeah. So good for her. Good for her. She's checking.
Yeah, she checks my thyroid. She's real good, Rachel. I like her. She's a fantastic dental hygienist. So in summary, would consuming more of certain antimicrobials like niacin that seem to have a targeted effect on just the bad microbes be beneficial for people who are worried about even contracting oral cancer?
So I'm going to say it's way too early to make those kinds of recommendations because so far the studies have only been in mice.
Right.
I have written a clinical trial to test this very question in cancer patients because that's obviously what we want to know. How safe is it to consume it? How efficacious is it for cancer patients? And the thing to remember is that these agents don't knock out only pathogens. They also knock out the commensals, but not to the same degree. So we have to be careful to make any kind of recommendations. But it's really the beginning of an exploration of this idea. We've never really thought to modulate the microbiome to prevent cancer. So it's just sort of the beginning of a new idea. And I think that's why it's exciting. It's just at the very beginning. Yeah.
It makes sense because we know that a lot of these rogue microbes, if you will, they actually secrete pro-inflammatory components. And we know that inflammation plays a role in the development of all types of cancers. There is an interesting peptide you may find interesting. We did a show about it a couple years ago. It's called LL37. Right now it's a research. Oh, you're familiar with it. It's a human catalyst citizen. Yeah. So I've used it. I had pretty bad case of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I used it for about 3 weeks and it completely changed my gut to the better. And I use it now periodically to try to kind of prune some of the bad microbes back from time to time. But I did a show about it 2 years ago and I had people email me saying that they got a hold of it. They injected 100 micrograms a day for 3 months and even their toenail fungus went away, which I found fascinating. But yeah, I thought, that could be just squirted right into the mouth. It doesn't have to be injected at all. It could work topically as well.
So you bring up another interesting area of what are known as prebiotics. And so these are, again, these components that are found in our diet that preferentially promote the growth of commensal bacteria, both oral cavity, gut. And so there is a great interest in prebiotics as well. And the thought there is that some of these components contain important attributes of our maybe early diets that are maybe missing in our processed diets. And so again, it's this idea that you're preferentially feeding the good or the commensal microbes by these prebiotics. And again, it's an early area, a lot of exploration, a lot of interest in this area, so that you're slowly shaping, if you will, the communities so that they preferentially grow maybe naturally by just the diets that you're eating.
So I read a study probably a decade ago when probiotics were really becoming very, very popular. Prebiotics would have to be popular as well because probiotics take root because of prebiotics. The way I think of probiotics and prebiotics is the coral is this calcification that the coral lives on. But the coral makes that calcification when it eats and poops. The coral itself gets bigger. And so it's this yin and yang. They depend on each other for life. And you can take all the probiotics you want. If you don't have prebiotics for them to latch onto and feed off of, then they're just going to pass right through. And I've never made this, but I may make it now that I'm talking about. There was a study done about 10 years ago where they compared oral probiotics, very high doses, like 1 trillion colony-forming units per packet 3 times a day, to a soup made from leeks, artichokes, and onions. That's it. Just take leeks, artichokes, and onions, put them in water. You can put them in broth if you want. Boil it like a soup till everything kind of gets mushy and breaks down. And they fed one group the soup, and the other group they gave the oral probiotics. And then they watched. They were able to estimate how much probiotic material was being consumed, and then how much was being excreted. And almost all of the probiotic in the packet was being excreted, but almost all of the probiotic that was being consumed in this leek, onion, and artichoke remained. And that's because the leeks, onions, and artichokes have a type of fiber that lends itself to be a prebiotic.
Right. Absolutely. That's exactly right. That otherwise you have to give animal models where this has been done large amounts of constant exposure of the probiotics. Otherwise they do not seed. You have to realize that the lawn has already been established. And in order to kick somebody out of that lawn, you have to make space for somebody else to colonize. And so you have to have significant pressure on that existing lawn, if you will, for somebody new to take root. And so, yes, I think you're absolutely right. It is a close relationship having those prebiotics present in order to preferentially allow the growth of new microbes to colonize in new microbes.
In fact, there's not only prebiotics in human breast milk, but there's also a type of simple sugar that now we know is not for the baby, but for the probiotics in the mother's milk to consume and stay alive as they're being transferred. So it's very interesting. You can, when you start talking about this stuff, you realize how intelligent nature really is, and how we think we're smarter than nature, and we will never be smarter than nature because nature made us. How can we be smarter than what made us? It's just impossible.
Absolutely. And so, I think that's why the Nissen story and that excited me for when I first started working on Nissen, was because it's been around for thousands of years. This fungus, the way it was discovered, it was this cheese that was being preserved, and people kept wondering, well, what was it about the cheese that was allowed it to be preserved? And it's this growth that was found on the cheese, again, that's been around for forever and forever, because we've been, milking cows and making cheese and stuff. And so, again, there's something that nature has produced, and it was just a matter of figuring out what it was. And so time will tell. I think that experiments of nature and learning from nature is very, very important, very helpful.
This is great research. I want to thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed my time with you.
Yeah, and as soon as we see more research come out, we'll have you back on, okay?
I'm excited. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Dr. Kapila.
Take care. You're welcome.
All right, so there you have it. That's all for today. We do have a show tomorrow. Rob does want to do a show tomorrow. I thought he wanted to take off because of Thanksgiving. But then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're off for Thanksgiving and back on next Monday. And we hope to see all of you then. Please pass this show around. There's lots of great information in this show for lots of people that can help them. And stay superhuman. We'll see you tomorrow.